It's a topic that people are excited about as the video game will come out in a few weeks. The college football video game 2024 edition. It's been 10 years since they released the video game, and they've got Georgia as the number one ranked offense and the number two ranked defense in that. So let's take what EA Sports has done with the top 10 defenses and the top 10 offenses, break it down, talk about it in real life. What are the implications? What are the truths behind it? I think that some of the list is interesting. I think the ratings are interesting, and we could talk about that. It's a video game. Look, I'll preface it here. It's a video game, and as much as, experts' predictions at the end of the day don't actually equate to real results on the field, the video game is not gonna do that either. But it's gonna be a lot of fun, and it's a good measuring stick as it's the off season. It's a good measuring stick heading into July. We're close to July, close to media days. This off season is starting to wrap up, and media days is kind of the end of it. The way that I look at it, it springs you into fall practice. It springs you into that transition period at the end of July and August into college football. Guess what? College football is starting a little bit earlier this year, right? You get the first week is going to be like August 31st is the Saturday of the week one games. That's when Georgia will play Clemson. And let's look at that. Let's see if Clemson is on either of these lists for the top offenses and top defenses. Actually, it looks like they've made both of them. So real quick, according to the video game EA Sports, with a 94 overall, Georgia's number one on offense. Oregon tied with them at 94, but they've got them ranked number two. Bama 91 at 3. Texas 91 at 4. Ohio State at 5. LSU at 6. Miami at 7, Colorado at 8, Missouri at 9, and Clemson at 10. So let's talk about these college football offenses. These are some offenses that we've seen, in person with our eyes here. Dawg post over the last few years. They've obviously changed, and heading into this year, it's going to be a little bit different. But just kicking it off with Georgia having the best offense in college football. I think on multiple occasions, but definitely one video about a month ago, and it was in my car. I remember it was a video where I was sitting in my car, so maybe that'll jog your memory if you're a frequent watcher. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post thanking you here if you are a frequent watcher. I think Georgia's offense can put up 45 points per game. I think that is the potential that this unit has, led by Carson Beck. All right, people are expecting him to have a big year. I think there's a lot of things that are important for Carson to do. I think it's important for him to take a step forward. I think there's a few parts of his game that if he just got a little bit better at, we're talking about a legitimate number one overall quarterback prospect that has high-end starter potential in the NFL. Those are the things that are still on the table for Carson Beck. You got to stay healthy, one. You got to hit a couple more deep balls. You got to hit a couple more passes that are rollout designs or things like that. There's just a few things that Carson Beck can do. And if he does that, he's going to be unequivocally the number one overall quarterback prospect in the 2025 draft a year from now. It starts with him. And when you have a quarterback like that, you obviously have potential to have a really good offense in college football. But even with the loss of Brock Bowers and the loss of Lamakonki, it's still a stacked offense. I think that between the transfers and what they already had, you think about like just starting lineup wise, you get Carson Beck, you got Trevor Etienne, who I think will take us forward and could really blossom in an offense where he'll have more to work with. He'll have a better offensive line to work with. He's got a better quarterback making decisions and reads and setting up his teammates. That'll open things up for Trevor Etienne. You expect him, if he gets the touches, he's going to have more than the 700-ish yards he had in each of his first two college football seasons at Florida. This is a guy with 1,000 yards in the engine. He's just got to do it. You got Dominic Lovett, who has apparently been really good this offseason. We saw it with our own eyes. I think Kobe Young could be a good addition. We've got plenty of good tight ends, regardless of Brock Bowers' departure. Georgia's offense does have potential to score a bunch of points. It's going to go up against a lot of really good teams. It's going to go up against how many of the teams that this EA Sports thinks has the top 10 defense? 1 with Alabama, 2 with Clemson. Let's see, 3 with Texas. So 3 of the top 10 defenses according to this video game. And they'll go up against 1, 2, 3 of the top 10 offenses. Those same teams, Alabama, Texas, and Clemson. So Clemson getting a little bit of love from these EA Sports. Let's move on to the rest of this offensive list and talk about it. Oregon, kind of up there. Look, Will Stein, great offensive showing in your first year as the OC for Oregon Ducks. An offense led by Bo Nix, a second-year guy with Oregon, a guy that had been around college football for a long time. Well, you got to replace that, and you do, and you replace that with essentially the same concept, a college football quarterback that's been around for a really long time and is a journeyman, Dillon Gabriel, going back from UCF to Oklahoma to now Oregon. And he's taking some time off, or not taking some time off, but he's taking his time getting to the NFL, and he is a very good quarterback. I think if that system works out well, you bring Evan Stewart along, another transfer guy from Texas A&M that people are extremely excited about. This is a high-level wide receiver recruit. You got other good ones that have transferred in previous cycles with Trayshawn Holden and Tej Johnson, an offensive line that you're returning a lot of that production. If it can be plug and play with Dillon Gabriel, and it can be plug and play with Evan Stewart and guys like that, then expecting the Oregon offense to put up a similar output as they did with Bo Nix, I don't think is a crazy thing. I don't think it's crazy. What was crazy to me is that Bo Nix elevated himself all the way to being a top 15 pick. I just didn't see that coming. And maybe I'm the one that's wrong about that. But I think that Dillon Gabriel has what it takes to do what he did in that offense. That's my point here. I think Texas will have a top offense. They're on this list. I think Alabama, despite what happened, lost. The Caleb Downs loss was their biggest loss on defense. They didn't lose a ton of offense. Isaiah Bond is a huge loss. The center's a big loss, but they kind of ran him out of town. With Bama, if Milroe takes a step forward, if Kalen DeBoer can figure out how to mesh his style with Milroe's strengths, yes, I think Alabama's offense will be very good. LSU just depends on the personnel. We know that they have what it takes to have a good offense. Miami, does Cam Ward go down there and really improve things? I'm skeptical of how good they could do that. Having Colorado on this list, new offensive line, right? You really hit the transfer portal hard for that. I think that Shedeur has plenty of talent. Shedeur Sanders. I think Travis Hunter has plenty of talent. They've got other talented players. They got a transfer in Will Shepard, who was a good wide receiver for Vanderbilt last year. Top 10 offense is a little lofty for me. Clemson, I think the same thing. I wouldn't have put them in this list after what I watched on offense last year, knowing that what is it that they did in the offseason to really make an improvement there. So you go back to this, and with Ohio State, I think if Will Howard was perceived as better, they would have the number one offense, because you look at the personnel. The personnel for Georgia and Ohio State offensively is the best. They have different strengths, but those two are the best. And the drastic difference between having Georgia with a 94 overall rating at 1 and Ohio State with an 89 overall rating at 4 or 5, to me that's a little bit drastic for how similar those offenses are in terms of talent. On defense, they got Ohio State there. Look, probably the best secondary in the country, led by transfer Caleb Downs. A front seven that has a ton of guys that have been around for a while, and big names like I don't know how to say his name, number 44, the defensive end, and Jack Sawyer. You got big names. You got Denzel Burke back there. You got Caleb Downs. There's big names all over the Ohio State defense. Georgia, number 2. We knew this would be a highly ranked defense. After that, I don't hate on the 10 that they put in here. Clemson will have a good defense. Or the top 5, maybe that's the argument. I think Notre Dame's got some guys. Michigan, losing a lot of guys, but they still got them. Texas, I think they've lost their important defensive players. They went to the transfer portal and replaced a couple of those positions with high-level talent. We'll see if that's good enough to have a top 10 defense. Penn State, we know, has had a pretty solid defense. Utah, same thing. I don't think there's anything necessarily crazy with the defensive list. Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Oregon 3. I don't know much about Oregon's defensive personnel, competitively speaking, but I do know that we're talking about 6 transfers on their defense. And I don't know if that is something that levels out to being a top 10 defense. So I think that there are some flaws with this ranking, but you can ultimately look at this and say, hey, we know that these are going to be some of the good defenses in college football. We know these are going to be some of the good offenses. I think Georgia's has the potential to be the best, and maybe unequivocally. I do think that Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, Missouri was a team on the offensive list, ranked number 9, a team to watch out for. One of the best quarterback to wide receiver duos you see in college football. They'll make the argument to be number 1 when you talk about Brady Cook and Luther Burden. Brady Cook, undervalued in college football over the last few years as Missouri's quarterback, winning bigger games, competing in bigger games, and now you've got a legitimate weapon over there. Will Missouri be able to overcome the loss of a couple of star players on defense to the NFL, along with running back Cody Schrader, who put up a ton of yards and was very important to them? I don't know. If they can replace that running production, this is a top 10 offense of college football because I do think it could get better. And Missouri is one of my sneaky playoff teams. Sneaky, a bad way to put it. Georgia should be happy that Missouri is not intertwined into the schedule with Texas and Alabama and Kentucky and all of what they have to deal with. Right? Georgia should be very happy that it was Missouri instead of Mississippi State. Like, that it was Mississippi State instead of them. Or Tennessee later on in the year. Who in their own right, could end up having a pretty good offense as well. I was watching a little bit more of their offensive clips yesterday, and that quarterback's the real deal, man, if he can put it together there. Thanks for watching. Newsletter and the link in the description down below. Thank you.